The rumble of my '78 Sportster was a constant in my life, a deep, throaty growl that vibrated through my bones, a counterpoint to the polite hum of the suburbs. Our houses sat side by side, split by a patch of manicured lawn, but the worlds we inhabited might as well have been on different planets. Amelia's house was all neat hedges and pristine white paint, a testament to order.
Mine?
Well, let's just say it had character, mostly in the form of peeling paint and a perpetual layer of grease from tinkering with engines. Amelia. Even the name sounded soft, like a sigh. She was everything I wasn't, everything I'd never wanted to be. From the moment we were old enough to toddle around the cul-de-sac, it was clear. She was the star student, the one with the perfect grades and the quiet, polite smile. Her hair, a cascade of dark silk, always seemed to fall just right, framing a face that was, even then, undeniably beautiful. Her eyes, a striking shade of hazel, held a depth that always fascinated me, even as she dutifully recited her multiplication tables or discussed her latest book club selection. She moved with an almost ethereal grace, a stark contrast to my own restless energy.
Me?
I was the kid who wore holes in her jeans before they were cool, the one whose knuckles were perpetually scraped, whose hands always smelled faintly of oil and metal. School was a cage, a place I tolerated just long enough to escape. While Amelia pored over textbooks, I was mapping out the fastest routes through the city, dreaming of the wind in my hair, the blur of the asphalt beneath my tires. Her parents, stiff-backed and disapproving, saw me as the living embodiment of everything they feared for their daughter. I'd hear their hushed whispers carry over the fence on a quiet evening. "Stay away from Layla, Amelia. She's a bad influence."
As if I didn't know.
But here's the thing about Amelia, she never quite listened to them. Not entirely. I remember one scorching summer afternoon, I'd scraped my knee badly trying to jump a ramp on my beat-up bicycle. My own folks were out, probably at a bar, and I was sitting on my porch, trying to act tough, even as a tear threatened to escape. Then, a soft shadow fell over me. Amelia, with her perfectly braided hair and untouched white dress, appeared with a small, neat first aid kit. She didn't say much, just knelt down, her gentle fingers carefully dabbing antiseptic on the wound. Her touch was featherlight, a stark contrast to the rough and tumble world I inhabited. She smelled of something sweet, like wildflowers and clean laundry, and in that moment, all the noise and chaos of my life just faded. I just watched her, the way the sunlight caught the fine hairs on her arm, the quiet intensity in her hazel eyes as she worked. As we grew, the chasm between us widened. She went to all the right parties, dated the suitable boys, pursued her academic achievements with quiet determination. I drifted further into the fringes, finding my tribe among the roar of engines and the rebellious spirit of the streets. Our interactions became rare, fleeting nods across the grocery store aisle, an awkward, forced smile if our paths crossed at the gas station. It was like we were two ships, launched from the same dock, but headed for vastly different horizons. Years passed, the separation a quiet ache I didn't acknowledge. Until last week. I was leaning against my bike outside the old diner, the scent of stale coffee and exhaust fumes clinging to my leather jacket. The sun was dipping, painting the sky in a messy sprawl of orange and purple. I watched the world go by, just me and the hum of my machine. Then, the bell above the diner door jingled, and she stepped out. Amelia. She still had that quiet grace, that same elegant bearing. Her dark hair was pulled back into a sophisticated ponytail, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore a tailored beige trench coat, the kind that whispered expensive and responsible. But it wasn't just the clothes or the posture. It was the way she carried herself, a faint air of weariness beneath the polished exterior, a subtle tightness around her eyes that spoke of quiet burdens. The perfect facade was still there, but now I could see the hairline cracks, the strain. Her gaze swept across the street, a momentary flicker, and then it landed on me. For a split second, those hazel eyes widened, a flash of surprise, then something else, something unreadable. She paused, a dainty paper coffee cup held loosely in her hand. A faint blush crept up her neck, a telltale sign I remembered from childhood. I pushed off my bike, my boots scraping on the asphalt. A slow, predatory smile stretched across my face. I knew that look in her eyes. It was the same one I'd seen when she secretly patched up my scraped knee, the one that betrayed a curiosity she was too afraid to show. "Amelia," I drawled, my voice a low rumble, like the distant growl of my bike. I let my eyes trail over her, deliberately, taking in every carefully chosen detail of her appearance. Her posture stiffened almost imperceptibly, but she didn't look away. "Fancy seeing you here, good girl." The last two words were laced with an implication that was anything but innocent. A challenge, a whisper of a forgotten past, a promise of something she thought she'd left behind. Her lips parted slightly, as if to speak, but no words came out. The blush deepened. The game, I realized, had just begun. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant hum of traffic and the steady beat of my own heart. Amelia's gaze, those captivating hazel eyes, flickered from my face down to my leather jacket, then to the gleaming chrome of my Sportster. A flicker of something akin to longing, quickly veiled, passed through them.
I saw it.
I always saw it. "Layla," she finally managed, her voice a soft murmur, like creek water over stones. It was the first time she'd spoken my name in what felt like forever, and the sound of it, so gentle, sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. I let my smile widen, a deliberate, slow burn. That's me. Still causing trouble, still kicking up dust. I pushed a hand through my short, dark hair, catching her eye again. "And you, Amelia? Still perfect, I see." My tone held a teasing edge, a subtle dig at the facade she presented to the world. She clutched her coffee cup a little tighter, her knuckles turning white. I'm doing well, thank you." It was the stock answer, polite, detached. But there was a tremor in her voice, a barely perceptible shift that only I, who had watched her for years, could detect. "Well, doing well sounds awfully boring, doesn't it?" I leaned back against my bike, crossing my arms, my eyes never leaving hers. "Don't you ever get tired of being so well-behaved?" A spark, quick and defiant, flashed in her eyes before she extinguished it. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The struggle was palpable. She was trying to maintain her composure, trying to push me away with the invisible shield she'd built around herself. But I was Layla. I knew how to find the cracks. "Tell you what," I said, uncrossing my arms and pushing off the bike, taking a step closer. The scent of my leather, gasoline, and something wilder filled the small space between us. Her gaze instinctively dropped to my boots, then slowly, hesitantly, drifted back up to meet mine. "Forget the well-behaved for one night. Come for a ride with me." Her breath hitched, a soft, almost inaudible gasp. "A ride? Layla, I can't. My parents." I cut her off, my voice dropping to a low, persuasive tone. "Your parents aren't here, are they? It's just you and me, and the open road." I gestured vaguely towards the fading twilight. "Just for a little while. What's the worst that could happen? A little excitement? A little bit of trouble?" My eyes, dark and intense, held hers captive. "Unless, of course, the good girl is too scared." That last word, scared, hung in the air, a direct challenge to the hidden rebel I knew lurked beneath her pristine surface. I saw the conflict warring in her expression, the ingrained fear of disapproval, battling against a sudden, undeniable spark of longing, of curiosity. Her gaze drifted to the sleek lines of my motorcycle, then back to me, a silent question in her eyes. "It's fast," I admitted, a smirk playing on my lips. "But I'm a good driver. I'll make sure you hold on tight." My voice was steady, a promise of exhilarating danger and safe passage all at once. She bit her lip, a delicate gesture that betrayed her inner turmoil. The sun had almost fully set, bathing the street in a moody, violet light. The moment felt suspended, charged with an unspoken electricity. Finally, with a barely perceptible nod, she whispered, "Okay." A triumphant surge went through me, but I kept my expression neutral, just a slight upturn of my lips. "Thought you might." I swung a leg over my bike, kicking the stand up with a practiced ease. "Hop on," I instructed, not turning to look at her. I heard the rustle of her coat, the soft click of her heels as she moved. The bike dipped slightly as she climbed on behind me, her movements stiff and cautious. "Hold on tight, Amelia," I murmured, my voice barely audible above the engine's low rumble. I felt her hands, hesitant at first, settle on my waist. Her fingers were cool against my leather jacket, almost fragile. Then, with a sudden twist of the throttle, the Sportster roared to life, a guttural sound that shook the pavement. We shot forward, a blur of chrome and black leather against the deepening night. I felt her stiffen behind me, her body rigid with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. "Relax," I yelled over the wind, a thrill coursing through me. I took a sharp turn, leaning into it, and felt her instinctively press closer, her arms tightening around my waist. This time, her grip was firmer, less hesitant. Her cheek, soft and warm, brushed against my back. I glanced in the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of her face. Her eyes were wide, her hair whipping wildly around her, but there was a faint, exhilarating smile playing on her lips. The good girl was holding on tight, embracing the speed, embracing the forbidden. The scent of wildflowers and clean laundry was now mixed with the thrilling smell of exhaust and leather. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, the chasm between our worlds felt a little less vast. It felt like it was closing. The city lights blurred into streaks of color as we weaved through the late-night traffic, the wind a relentless sculptor against our faces. Amelia, initially a rigid passenger, had begun to yield to the rhythm of the ride. Her grip around my waist had become an anchor, firm and trusting, her body swaying with mine as I leaned into each turn. I could feel the soft weight of her against my back, the faint shake that wasn't entirely from fear. We rode for what felt like an eternity, past neon-lit storefronts and quiet residential streets, until I found myself pulling into a deserted lot overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like scattered diamonds, a breathtaking panorama. I cut the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening after the roaring symphony of the bike. Amelia slowly released her grip, her fingers lingering for a moment on my jacket before she slid off the seat. She still looked a little dazed, her hair a beautiful mess, her cheeks flushed from the wind and the thrill. The delicate scent of her perfume, now intertwined with the grit of the city, was intoxicating. "Wow," she breathed, her voice a little hoarse, her eyes wide as she took in the view. There was a genuine wonder in her expression, a raw, unadulterated joy that I hadn't seen on her face in years. It was a look usually reserved for children or for those who had just discovered something truly extraordinary. I leaned back against the bike, watching her, a satisfied smirk playing on my lips. "Never seen the city from up here, have you, good girl?" She shook her head, a small, shy smile gracing her lips.
"No."
"It's beautiful. And terrifyingly high." "That's the best kind of beautiful, isn't it?" I pushed off the bike, taking a step closer to her, invading her personal space just enough to make her aware of my proximity. The air between us was thick, charged with unspoken possibility. A little bit of danger makes everything more vivid. She swallowed, her gaze meeting mine. The hazel depths were now alight with a newfound fire, a flicker of something wild and untamed that I hadn't known she possessed. The good girl was beginning to fray at the edges, and I was relishing every moment of it. "Come on," I said, a mischievous glint in my eye. "I know a place. Best damn burgers in the city, and they don't ask too many questions." We ended up at a greasy spoon diner on the outskirts of town, a place Amelia would never in a million years have set foot in on her own. The Formica tables were chipped, the coffee was strong enough to strip paint, and the waitress had a tattoo of a dragon winding up her arm. Amelia, initially stiff, slowly began to relax, drawn in by the easy banter and the sheer novelty of it all. I watched her, fascinated, as she devoured her burger, a smear of ketchup on the corner of her mouth, a genuine, uninhibited laugh bubbling up from her throat as I recounted a particularly outrageous tale of a street race. When the bill came, I simply winked at her, dropped a crumpled 20 on the table, and grabbed her hand, pulling her up. "Come on," I whispered, my thumb brushing over her knuckles, sending a jolt through us both. "Let's make a run for it." Her eyes widened, a mixture of shock and sheer exhilaration. "Layla, we can't." But even as she protested, she was already moving, letting me lead her. We burst out of the diner, her laughter echoing mine as we sprinted towards my bike, the thrill of the chase, the illicit act, binding us together in a shared secret. We rode away, leaving the meager payment and a lingering sense of mischief in our wake. The adrenaline was still pumping when we pulled up to a secluded spot near the old abandoned quarry, a place where no one would ever look for us. The moon, a sliver of silver, cast long, distorted shadows around us. I cut the engine, and the quiet descended, heavier than before. Amelia slid off the bike, still breathless, her chest heaving slightly. Her eyes were sparkling, her lips curved into a smile that was both giddy and a little bit dangerous. "I can't believe we just did that," she whispered, a touch of awe in her voice. "My parents would have a heart attack." "Good," I murmured, stepping closer, until I was right in front of her. The subtle scent of her, that mix of wildflowers and rebellion, filled my senses. "Maybe it's time for a few heart attacks, don't you think?" My gaze dropped to her lips, still slightly parted from her laughter, and then back up to her eyes. There was a question in my eyes, a challenge, an invitation. She stood perfectly still, not backing away, not moving. Her breath hitched again, a soft, almost imperceptible sound in the quiet night. I reached out, my fingers gently tracing the line of her jaw, my thumb brushing against her cheek. Her skin was warm, exquisitely soft. She shook, a tiny shift that ran through her. Her eyes fluttered closed for a brief moment, then opened, locking onto mine, filled with a raw, undeniable connection. I leaned in, slow and deliberate, giving her every opportunity to pull away, to protest, to be the good girl she was supposed to be. She didn't. Her lips parted further, a silent invitation. And then I kissed her. It was a slow, meaningful kiss, a meeting of unspoken feelings. Her lips were soft, hesitant at first, then responding, opening beneath mine with a tentative warmth. I tasted coffee and the ghost of something sweet, something innocent, mixed with the wildness we had just shared. My hand moved from her jaw to cup the back of her head, my fingers tangling in the soft, dark silk of her hair, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss. A soft sound escaped her throat, a sound that thrilled me to my core. Her arms, which had been hanging loosely by her sides, slowly, almost reluctantly, lifted and wrapped around my neck, her fingers tangling in my hair, pulling me even closer still. There was no resistance, only a fervent, eager acceptance. The carefully constructed walls around Amelia, the good girl persona, crumbled under the force of that kiss, revealing a hidden fire, a burgeoning spirit that had been aching to be unleashed. In that moment, under the indifferent gaze of the moon, she was no longer just Amelia, the quiet neighbor. She was simply there, with me, and the taste of this new bond was exquisitely sweet. The first kiss was a revelation, a silent explosion that rewrote the rules of our shared universe. When we finally broke apart, breathless, the air between us crackled with a new, potent energy. Amelia's eyes were half closed, her lips swollen and glistening, a stunned wonder on her face. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps mirroring my own. The wildness I had glimpsed in her eyes earlier was now fully ablaze, an untamed fire. I kept my hand at the back of her head, my thumb tracing the delicate curve of her neck. Her skin felt impossibly soft beneath my touch, sending a jolt straight through me. "See," I whispered, my voice rougher than I intended. "Sometimes a little trouble is exactly what you need." She didn't speak, just stared at me, her hazel eyes dark and luminous in the moonlight. There was a question in them, a mixture of fear and profound curiosity, but also a dawning realization. The fear was for the consequences, for the unraveling of her carefully constructed life. The curiosity was for this new, exhilarating path I was leading her down. The subsequent weeks became a clandestine dance, a series of stolen moments and whispered exchanges. We couldn't risk being seen together openly, not with our parents' hawk-like surveillance and the stifling scrutiny of our small town. So, our encounters became secret rendezvous, late-night rides to the desolate outskirts, hushed conversations parked beneath the stars, quick, brief touches in shadowy alleyways. I'd send her cryptic texts, a single emoji or a time and place, and she would invariably appear, often looking a little frazzled, a strand of hair out of place, a telltale flush on her cheeks that betrayed her hurried escape. Each time, I'd see the apprehension in her eyes, quickly followed by that familiar, irresistible spark of rebellion. One night, I found her waiting for me at the abandoned quarry, wrapped in a thick wool shawl against the chill. She looked delicate and ethereal in the moonlight, a stark contrast to the rugged landscape around us. I cut the engine, and the silence descended, amplifying the pounding of my heart. "You came," I stated, not a question, but a quiet affirmation. She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself.
I
could not. Her voice was barely a whisper. I approached her slowly, my boots crunching on the loose gravel. Her gaze followed my every move, a moth drawn irrevocably to a flame. When I reached her, I didn't say anything, just reached out and took her hands, pulling them away from her body and intertwining my fingers with hers. Her hands were cold, but my touch seemed to bring warmth to them. "You're shaking," I observed, my thumb stroking the back of her hand. "It's not just the cold," she admitted, her gaze dropping to our joined hands. The admission was raw, vulnerable. I squeezed her hands gently. "Tell me, Amelia, what's going on in that perfect head of yours?" I lifted her chin with my free hand, forcing her to meet my gaze. "You can tell me anything. You know that, right?" Her eyes welled up, glistening like polished stones in the moonlight. The tears didn't fall, but her vulnerability was palpable. "It's everything, Layla. My parents, their expectations, the life they've mapped out for me. It feels like I'm suffocating." Her voice trembled, a crack appearing in her carefully constructed composure. "I try to be what they want, what everyone expects. But it's not me." My heart ached with a fierce protectiveness. I pulled her gently closer, until her forehead rested against my shoulder, her soft hair brushing my cheek. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight, allowing her to lean into my strength. The scent of her, that sweet, delicate fragrance, filled my senses, and I inhaled deeply, trying to absorb her pain, her unspoken sorrow. "I know," I murmured, my voice a low rumble against her ear. "I've always known." It was true. Even as a kid, I'd seen the shadow in her eyes, the quiet yearning for something more, something different. She'd always been a wild bird in a gilded cage, and I, the street cat, had just found the key. She clung to me, her fingers fisting in my jacket, a silent confession. I felt the wetness of a tear finally escape and soak into my leather. I simply held her, letting the quiet comfort of my embrace speak volumes. I didn't try to offer solutions or platitudes. I just offered her a sanctuary, a moment of unburdened honesty. After a long moment, she pulled back slightly, her eyes still red-rimmed, but with a newfound clarity. "When I'm with you," she whispered, her voice still a little shaky, "I feel alive, like I can finally breathe." My gaze intensified, a primal instinct stirring within me. "Good," I murmured, my thumb stroking her cheek, wiping away the tear. "That's exactly how it should be." My eyes dropped to her lips again, the memory of our first kiss still vivid, still electric. The temptation was overwhelming, a silent, powerful force pulling us closer. I lowered my head, slowly, giving her ample time to pull away. She didn't. Instead, her eyes fluttered shut, her head tilting slightly, inviting me in. This time, the kiss was softer, more tender, a promise of comfort and acceptance, but with an undeniable undertone of growing connection. It was a language of touch and unspoken devotion, a silent dialogue that spoke volumes about the new, intimate world we were building, brick by stolen brick. In the darkness of the quarry, under the watchful eye of the crescent moon, the good girl was unraveling, and I was there to catch every beautiful, broken piece. Our secret world expanded, becoming a vibrant, illicit bubble against the dull backdrop of our structured lives. Each stolen glance, each hushed conversation, each lingering touch was a thread weaving a tapestry of undeniable connection. Amelia, the good girl, who had always walked a meticulously straight line, was now navigating the shadowy alleyways of newfound freedom, and I was her willing accomplice, her guide. The quarry, with its stark, isolated beauty, became our sanctuary. One evening, under a sky peppered with stars, Amelia arrived wrapped in a delicate cashmere sweater, looking soft and ethereal, but with a fierce glint in her eyes I'd grown to cherish. I'd brought a thermos of spiked coffee, the kind that warmed you from the inside out, and we shared it, passing it back and forth, our fingers brushing with deliberate slowness. The conversation flowed easily, a comfortable murmur in the vast quiet. She told me about her days, the endless meetings, the polite but suffocating expectations, the way she felt like a doll, meticulously dressed and posed for public consumption. I listened, my gaze never leaving her, absorbing every nuance of her voice, every flicker of emotion in her hazel eyes. And then, she spoke of her dreams, the ones she kept hidden even from herself, a desire for freedom, for art, for a life lived without the suffocating weight of expectation. "It sounds foolish, doesn't it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, staring out at the twinkling lights of the distant city. I reached out, my fingers gently tracing the curve of her jaw, turning her face towards me. "No," I said, my voice low and firm. "It sounds like a beginning." My gaze dropped to her lips, parted slightly, moist with the coffee. The unspoken tension between us was a palpable force, a magnet pulling us closer. Her breath hitched, a soft, almost imperceptible sound. My eyes searched hers, asking a silent question, offering an implicit invitation. There was no hesitation in her gaze, only a deep, profound connection, an acceptance of what was about to unfold. I leaned in, my mouth finding hers in a slow, meaningful kiss. This wasn't the tentative exploration of our first kiss, nor the tender reassurance of the second. This was a deep, undeniable bond that had been simmering beneath the surface for weeks. Her lips, soft and yielding, parted beneath mine, inviting me deeper. A soft sound escaped her throat, a sound that resonated deep within me, fueling the fire that had been building. My hands moved from her face to her waist, pulling her closer until there was no space left between us. I felt the delicate curve of her body against mine, the warmth radiating from her, intoxicating and addictive. She responded with an intensity that surprised and thrilled me, her arms winding around my neck, her fingers tangling in my hair, pulling me tighter still. Her entire body softened against mine, a complete surrender. We moved together, a slow, gentle dance, our mouths locked in a passionate embrace. Her soft sounds, the frantic pulse at her throat, the way her body shifted in my arms, every sensation was heightened, exquisite. It was a merging of two worlds, two souls, finding solace and exhilarating connection in each other. In that moment, the stars above were silent witnesses, and the distant city lights blurred into an insignificant backdrop. There was only Amelia and me, and the raw, beautiful intensity of our shared bond. The boundaries between us dissolved, leaving only a potent, undeniable connection. The good girl was no more, replaced by a woman fully alive, fully present, completely with me. The realization hit Amelia with a quiet force in the aftermath. As we lay tangled together on a blanket I'd brought, The chill of the night air a stark contrast to the warmth between us. She pressed her face into my neck. Her hand, soft and delicate, traced the outline of my tattooed arm. "Layla," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I love you." The words hung in the air, a fragile confession, heavy with implication and consequence. My heart constricted, a fierce, almost painful clench. It wasn't a surprise. I'd felt it building between us, the slow, inevitable slide into something deeper, something permanent. But hearing it, spoken aloud, made it real, dangerous, exhilarating. I tightened my hold around her, burying my face in her hair, inhaling her scent. "I know," I murmured, my voice rough with emotion. "I love you too, Amelia." But even in that profound moment of connection, a shadow loomed. The world outside our bubble was still waiting, still watching. Amelia's phone, which she had carefully silenced, buzzed with an insistent vibration from her bag. Her parents. The fragile peace of our sanctuary was momentarily shattered by the harsh reality of her other life, the one she was so desperately trying to escape. The blissful haze began to recede, replaced by the chill of impending conflict. The quiet rebellion had blossomed into something undeniable, something that would soon demand a reckoning. The insistent vibration of Amelia's phone, echoing in the quiet of the quarry, was a harsh reminder of the world we were trying to forget. It pulled us back from the precipice of our shared bliss, injecting a jolt of unwelcome reality into our intimate bubble. Amelia tensed in my arms, her body stiffening. The tender vulnerability of moments ago was replaced by a familiar anxiety. "It's my mother," she whispered, her voice tight, the magic of the night instantly dissipating. I simply held her tighter, pressing a kiss to her temple. There was nothing to say, no comforting words that could erase the looming presence of her parents. We both knew what this meant. Our clandestine world, fragile and beautiful, was about to collide head-on with the rigid expectations of her old life. She slipped away from me, retrieved her phone, and glanced at the screen, her face illuminated by its glow. Her expression was a mixture of resignation and fear. "I have to go," she said, though it sounded more like a plea for understanding. I just nodded, my jaw tight. I understood.
For now.
"Be careful," I said, the words heavy with unspoken concern. The drive back to her house was silent, punctuated only by the low rumble of my Sportster. The exhilaration of our secret rendezvous was replaced by a growing sense of dread. I could feel her tension, her anticipation of the inevitable confrontation, radiating from her even as she clung to my waist. I pulled up to her curb, the streetlights casting long, accusing shadows. She slid off the bike, her movements hesitant, her eyes still clouded with worry. "Amelia," I began, reaching out to touch her arm, but she flinched, pulling away almost imperceptibly. The fear of being caught, of their bond being exposed, was a tangible thing between us. "I'll text you," she promised, her voice barely audible, before she turned and hurried towards her meticulously kept house, disappearing through the front door without a backward glance. The moment the door clicked shut, a cold emptiness settled in my gut. I sat there for a long time, the engine idling, watching the dark windows of her house, a sense of foreboding washing over me. The text never came that night, nor the next day. A heavy silence descended, a suffocating blanket that pressed down on me. I tried to distract myself, tinkering with my bike, riding aimlessly, but Amelia's absence was a gaping hole. I knew what was happening. Her parents, with their unwavering disapproval of me, would have wasted no time in making their feelings clear. 2 days later, the storm broke. I was in my garage, covered in grease, when I heard the sharp, insistent knocking on my front door. It wasn't Amelia. It was her mother, her face a mask of furious indignation, flanked by her father, who looked equally stern, if a little more reserved. I wiped my hands on a rag, a defiant smirk on my face. "Can I help you?" I drawled, leaning against the doorframe, making no move to invite them in. "You know exactly why we're here, Layla," her mother hissed, her voice trembling with barely controlled rage. "Stay away from our daughter. You are a poisonous influence. We forbid her from ever seeing you again." Her father stepped forward, his voice calmer, but no less menacing. "Amelia is a good girl, Layla. She has a future, a respectable life ahead of her. You are not a part of it." My smirk hardened. "Amelia makes her own choices," I countered, my voice low and dangerous. "And maybe, just maybe, she doesn't want the respectable life you've so neatly planned for her." That seemed to ignite her mother's fury even further. "You think you know what's best for her? You, a delinquent, a hooligan?" She is confused, misled by your inappropriate behavior. The accusation hung in the air, thick with their disgust. I just stared at them, my eyes cold, unyielding. There was no point in arguing. They wouldn't understand. They couldn't. Their world was too small, too constrained by their own rigid beliefs. Just as I was about to dismiss them, a quiet voice cut through the tension. "Stop it." We all turned. Amelia stood on her porch, dressed in the kind of sensible clothes her parents approved of, but her shoulders were squared, her chin lifted. Her face was pale, but her hazel eyes, though red-rimmed, held a steely resolve I'd never seen before. A wild, desperate hope surged through me. "Amelia, darling," her mother began, her voice suddenly saccharine. "Go inside. We're handling this." "No," Amelia said, her voice stronger now, surprising even me. "You're not handling anything. You're trying to control my life, just like you always have." She took a step closer, her gaze unwavering as it swept from her parents to me. Her eyes finally met mine, and in them I saw an apology, a promise, and an unshakable determination. "I'm not confused," she continued, her voice trembling slightly but firm. "I know exactly what I want. And what I want is a life where I can be myself, where I can breathe. And if that means choosing a path that you don't approve of, then so be it." Her gaze flickered to mine again, a silent, powerful affirmation. "Layla makes me feel more alive than your perfect life ever has." Her parents gasped, horrified. Her mother clutched her chest, her face contorted in disbelief. "Amelia, what are you saying? You're throwing away everything." Amelia shook her head, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing happiness." Her eyes, though tearful, burned with a fierce, quiet fire. It was the good girl's rebellion, finally unleashed. "I'm leaving." The words hung in the air, heavy with consequence. My breath caught in my throat. I looked at Amelia, truly looked at her, and saw not the timid girl I'd known, but a woman standing on the precipice of a radical transformation. A triumphant, almost predatory thrill surged through me. She was truly with me now, irrevocably. And I knew, with a certainty that vibrated through my very core, that I would be there to catch her, to lead her, to cherish her, as she stepped into the glorious, unknown chaos of her own choosing. The immediate aftermath was a blur of shouting and tears from Amelia's parents, but their words, sharp and cutting, seemed to dissolve into background noise for her. Her gaze, fixed on mine, was unwavering, filled with a defiant light that had replaced the earlier apprehension. She wasn't just choosing me. She was choosing herself, a version of Amelia I had always known existed beneath the surface, but now stood fully revealed. "Go get your things," I said, my voice barely a whisper, yet resonating with a steel-like certainty. "Anything you can carry. We're leaving." She nodded, a single, resolute movement. The fight had drained her, but it had also solidified her resolve. Without another word, she turned and walked back into her house, leaving her parents speechless, frozen in their outrage on the porch. The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was heavy with the weight of shattered expectations and irreversible decisions. I didn't move. My eyes stayed glued to the door, a mix of triumph and fierce protectiveness swirling inside me. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about her liberation, her escape from a life that had slowly suffocated her spirit. And I was the catalyst, the unruly wind that had finally ripped through her carefully constructed world. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably only 15 minutes before the front door creaked open again. Amelia emerged, not with a suitcase, but with a simple, worn backpack slung over one shoulder. She clutched a small, leather-bound journal to her chest with her other hand. Her face was tear-stained, but her eyes held a steady, unwavering light. She looked lighter, somehow, as if she had shed an invisible burden. She didn't look back at her parents, who were still standing on the porch, now silent, their faces a mixture of disbelief and profound sadness. She just walked straight towards me, her steps firm and deliberate. When she reached me, her gaze locked onto mine, a silent conversation passing between us. There was fear, yes, but also a fierce determination and a burgeoning hope that mirrored my own. "Ready?" I asked, my voice low. She nodded, a small, tremulous smile touching her lips. "Ready." I swung a leg over my Sportster, settling into the familiar embrace of the saddle. "Hop on," I instructed, not needing to look at her. I heard the rustle of her backpack, the soft click of her sensible shoes against the asphalt as she climbed on behind me. This time, her arms didn't just wrap around my waist. They held me tight, her body pressing against mine with an urgency born of desperate hope and newfound freedom. I felt her cheek rest against my back, a silent promise. I kicked the stand up, turned the key, and with a guttural roar, the Sportster sprang to life. The sound was a defiant shout into the quiet, judgmental night. We pulled away from the curb, leaving behind the immaculate house, the stunned parents, and the suffocating expectations. The wind immediately snatched at us, tugging at Amelia's hair, whipping it into a wild tangle around her face. I could feel her shake against my back, but it wasn't from cold. It was the thrill, the sheer, intoxicating rush of freedom. I pushed the bike faster, the engine screaming its protest, as the familiar streets of our hometown blurred into an indistinct canvas behind us. We rode for hours, the moon guiding our path, the stars our silent witnesses. The city lights eventually faded into a distant glow, replaced by the vast, open expanse of the highway. I didn't have a specific destination in mind, just a direction, away. Away from the judgment, away from the constraints, away from the life that had almost smothered the vibrant woman now clinging to my back. Amelia didn't speak, but I could feel her presence, a warm, comforting weight against me. Every now and then, she'd press a soft kiss to my back, a silent testament to her gratitude, her trust, her burgeoning love. The road ahead was uncertain, stretching endlessly into the darkness, but for the first time in her life, Amelia was charting her own course, guided by the heartbeat of a woman she loved and the roar of a motorcycle that carried her into an unknown, glorious future. As the first hints of dawn painted the horizon in hues of rose and gold, we pulled off the highway, finding a secluded overlook that offered a panoramic view of the awakening world. I cut the engine, and the profound silence, broken only by the chirping of unseen birds, felt like a benediction. Amelia slid off the bike, her legs a little stiff, but her eyes were alight with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She looked disheveled, her clothes rumpled, her face smudged, but more beautiful, more real, than I had ever seen her. The sun, just peeking above the distant mountains, cast a golden glow on her face, highlighting the delicate freckles that dusted her nose. She walked to the edge of the overlook, her gaze sweeping across the vast landscape. I watched her, leaning against my bike, a profound sense of peace settling over me. The old Amelia, the good girl, was gone. In her place stood this woman, resilient and brave, ready to face whatever lay ahead. She turned to me, her eyes shining with unshed tears, but these were tears of hope, not sorrow. "What now?" she asked, her voice soft, full of a quiet wonder. I pushed off my bike, walking towards her, until I stood directly in front of her. I reached out, gently cupping her face in my hands. Her skin was cool beneath my touch, but her gaze was warm, unwavering. "Now," I said, my voice low and husky. We start over. Together. I leaned in, my lips finding hers in a soft, tender kiss, a promise sealed under the vast, open sky. It was a kiss that spoke of new beginnings, of fierce devotion, of a love forged in rebellion and freedom. The road stretched out before us, endless and unknown, but with Amelia by my side, clinging to me through every twist and turn, I knew we could conquer anything. We were unchained, untamed, and irrevocably intertwined, ready to carve out our own destiny, 1 mile at a time.